It's Tuesday afternoon, 4 p.m. in Central Europe, and it's Space Café Web Talk time. Our Space Café Web Talk, 33 minutes with Dr. Nanja Strecker, will begin soon. Thanks for joining us for our talk today about accelerating the Swiss space ecosystem. And as always, we appreciate your participation and ongoing feedback. SpaceWatch.Global is a Europe-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. And I would like to thank all of our private and corporate supporters that showed their commitment to keeping our independent journalism alive. So we really appreciate that. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletters, and the Space Café podcast. And for all our fans of audio content, we have new episodes in the Space Café radio at the moment on the road in Brussels from the last EU Space Conference. And one of them, one of the Space Café radios, is my interview with Josef Aschbacher, which was a great honor for me to have him in front of the microphone. So it's online on all the major platforms, podcast platforms. Just search for Space Café Radio. We also keep our fan shop open online for you to support us actively and become a space watcher. If you have missed any of our previous web talks, we have an archive available on our website in the events section and on YouTube. So, congrats to Switzerland for the first medals, so the gold and bronze medals at the Olympic Winter Games in Beijing. I know my guest is watching the games very carefully and very closely, and of course with passion as a former figure skater. And thanks for still being up again, awake and full of energy for our Space Café today. So welcome, Dr. Nanja Strecker. Great to have you here. And for all of you that does not know Nanja that well, she is an experienced innovation expert with a PhD in this domain and worked extensively in the industry in that field, also in strategic consulting and now with startups. And that makes it so interesting today. She leads the ESA's, European Space Agency's Business Incubator Center in Switzerland. And beside Nanja is a demanded expert around innovation management topics in large firms, giving talks, advising and consulting. Moreover, she has been teaching university courses in Germany and Switzerland. And now here in our Space Café, Nanja, welcome again. Thanks for being with us. Are you ready to go?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I feel very honored to be here, and even so during the Winter Olympics. Thanks for that.
So, what was your highlight so far of the Olympics?
Of the Olympics, yeah, obviously, you know, the gold of Beat Feuz yesterday in the downhill men's.
Not so bad. And it was unexpected, or was he a set winner?
Well, he was one of the favorites, and yeah, glad he made it.
Great. So let's go to the topic. The ESA BIC are Europe-wide. Well, the ESA BICs in Europe seems to be really a success story. Tell us more about the ESA BIC Switzerland, and of course, the team behind.
Yes, we are very proud to be part of the ESA BIC family in Europe. We are actually one of the late joiners of that family. We started the end of 2016. And in the last 5 years, we have supported 50 startups, and we will support another 50 startups in the 5 years to come. And as with the other BICs in Europe, the startups need to be based in Switzerland. They need to have a space connection, and they need to be less than 5 years old. And we support them with money, with technical and business support. It's a holistic package. And yes, you talked about the team. I definitely want to highlight them. They are also watching today and supporting me every day.
They had to watch.
Yeah, one is swimming, I think. He's not watching so much. Exactly. But there's Michael, our space expert, with more than 10 years in the space industry. Very glad to have him on the team. Then Ina, very important for communications, marketing, events, social media. And the one swimming, I think, is Cyril, usually supporting startups on fundraising and financing questions. And beyond that, I want to state quickly that we have great operational partners because we partner with VentureKick and venture leaders in Switzerland. And obviously, not to forget, we have also part-time José Achas, the famous one, on board.
And he is online right now, so we see him in the audience.
Supporting the big part-time as well with his passion, experience for space.
That sounds pretty cool. So what is different from the ESA BIC Switzerland to other BICs? Because again, it's a Europe-wide concept of ESA. So what is different? What is the Swiss taste in it?
Yes, there are a few differences. Maybe to go quickly back in history. Actually, the Swiss ESA delegation negotiated something already slightly different with ESA at the time. That helped a bit. And second to that, there was actually a competition for whom would host the BIC in Switzerland, and there were 3 bids, and that makes things a bit different. And now coming concretely to the aspects which are different of the Swiss BIC. To start with, startups can get up to 200,000 euro non-dilutive funding in Switzerland, which is quite a bit more than in other countries. Second, we have an extensive and unique partner network. You find it on our webpage, ESABIC.ch. And we support startups in the entire country, wherever they are, in whichever canton of Switzerland. So these are, in a nutshell, the differences of the BIC in Switzerland.
When you say the startups are supported all over the place, all over Switzerland, what does it mean? Do you have a hub like we see it in Germany, in Oberpfaffenhofen, or in the other BICs, so where people are gathering, or is that really a decentralized setup?
It is a decentralized setup, but we see the startups physically regularly. We go to their premises as well, wherever they are in the country. And in Switzerland, we have every second month, and also this Thursday, community events. And before Corona, they were always taking place in person, in Lausanne, in Bern, in Zurich, wherever there was a good meeting point. And nowadays, they're a mix of online and offline, and we hope to have many more in person again in 2022. Sure. But yes, it's not purely online. We see the startups physically regularly.
That's good. Yeah, wherever the Bundesbahn brings you.
No, not the Bundesbahn, Torsten, you're in Switzerland. It's the SBB.
Isn't that the
Schweizer Bundesbahn.
Yeah, so come on. It's almost close. So, and apologize for everyone who is watching it. So, accelerating the Swiss space ecosystem is our theme today. Let's start, before we're accelerating, start with an overview of the Swiss space startup scene or space ecosystem.
Yeah, thanks for asking the question. I would like to start with the 3 pillars of innovation that one talks about in the space industry, in the space world. There is infrastructure, distribution, and applications. And actually in Switzerland, we have startups in all 3 of these pillars. Having said that, in infrastructure and application, we have a bit more, but we also have in distribution. So that's one aspect. A second aspect I want to make is we have a few pure space startups. I will state them in a second. In Switzerland, various of them are known internationally by now. But we also have many startups which do space and other business verticals. And We might be talking about that a little bit later. So space and something else. And to give you some examples, you know, like various of them are quite well known. Clear Space, the one collecting space debris on behalf of ESA, was supported by the ESA BIC in Switzerland. Another one is SciSec, a cybersecurity solution for space, but also for other verticals, also supported by us for a time. But then there's also startups that were supported by the precursor program and JOSE, AP Swiss, which, for example, Swiss to 12, Astrocast, which went on the stock market recently. Astrocast doing obviously the cost-efficient, very advanced nanosatellites for IoT, and Swiss to 12 doing 3D printed radio frequency products. So you see it's quite broad, and these are four kind of startups that are more prominent in terms of space in Switzerland. And some do purely space and others do space and something else. That's just to give a couple of examples. I think with that, we gave quite some new actors and dynamic to the ecosystem.
So, but when you talk about the space ecosystem, you're talking primarily about these startups that went through your or the precursor programs or your ESA BICs. I mean, you have established player as well in the market in Switzerland. I mean, Ruhr, Contravis, however, you know them better. But I have a question about these three pillars. When you say infrastructure, distribution, applications, application is clear. So that's what we do with the data. But distribution is then the SATCOM sector and so the IoT things, or
also
what is
chips related on satellites, etc., and other technologies on satellites. Exactly.
Okay. Okay, and infrastructure is clear. So coming back to the 5 years or 6 years of ESA BIC, so what have you achieved with the ESA BIC so far? Because when I'm correctly followed that, you have a limited number of companies in this cohorts every year or every term. So, and what is the success rate? So where do you stay today when you look back?
Yeah, I'd actually like to take this question on two levels. On the first level, talking about the startups and what they have achieved. So as said before, we supported 50 so far. We can support 10 new ones every year, and then they stay for 2 years in the program. Okay. And they've created between 500 and 600 new high-tech jobs in Switzerland. It's important as well. They have raised over 230 million third-party money. So in addition to what they got through the program, ESA BIC, etc. And we estimate between 10 and 15 have at least 1 million of revenue every year by now. And that is very important because we want to support companies to grow into businesses that make money, right? So not only fundraising is important, but making money through selling products, services, etc. So we are quite proud of that. So that's on the level of startups. On the ecosystem level that we talked about briefly, we brought more players, but it's also new interaction. So take the example of ClearSpace. ClearSpace is the first prime in Switzerland. But ClearSpace does not do this project on their own, but they have a lot of partners, suppliers. So established players in space from Switzerland, but also from abroad, they partner with them and are, so to say, suppliers, right? So that gives a whole new dynamic to the ecosystem, that the established become partners of the startups and suppliers. That was not seen like that before 10 years ago or so. So that's one aspect. Another aspect that is also quite new, some top executives of these established players actually join the startups. So I don't want to mention any names, but you can go and have a look at the management team of, for example, of Swiss 212 and who is in there, and you will see some prominent names that have worked at an established player before. So that's also something not seen like this before. And as a third aspect, I would like to mention, and we're quite proud of that as well, we regularly get applications from abroad, from startups from abroad that want to join our program in Switzerland. And in one of the recent cohorts, we accepted Coactum with actually a founder from Catalonia in Spain. And he chose to come to Switzerland with his project and his startup because he considered the ecosystem quite dynamic and the support given by ESA BIC and other initiatives really helpful. So these are all aspects to the ecosystem that I think the ESA BIC program and the startups supported by it brought a bit to Switzerland.
That's interesting. I mean, when you say you have 50 companies that went through this program and they created 500 to 600 high qualified jobs, then we talk still about small, medium enterprises, so with 10, 15 jobs, obviously, if I make the calculation correct.
If you do the average calculation, Torsten, I agree, but innovation is not average, right? So yeah, as in all portfolios, you have a couple of them that are really strong, that have raised 20 million or more, that have over 50 employees. And you have other ones that stay small and have a few employees. We actually have one that went bankrupt. And I don't know if this is good or bad, because usually in innovation, it's also good if projects stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that would feel a whole new Space Café, I guess.
Indeed, indeed. So let's talk about the challenges. I mean, startups and space. I mean, we also could frame it, never take an easy path. Which are the challenges do startups face with regards to the space market in Switzerland? I mean, there's this general thing, of course, we see that here and there, but what are challenges in Switzerland? Or, I mean, obviously, besides the high pricing.
Yeah, you find also solutions to that, right? You can have subsidiaries in other countries, and we have various startups doing so early on already. So in terms of challenges, you know, I'm talking about startups now that have not experienced space in a previous life. So example, not at university doing research projects in the space industry, etc., because obviously they got already to know that world. But the ones who are really new to that, it continues a special world. It's functioning in a special way. It's complex. There's a special language to it. There's all these programs and initiatives, and it's a bit of a jungle, quite honestly. And we see it as our role to help the startup navigate this jungle. And it's on a Swiss level, but it's equally on a European level as well. So like all the programs from ESA, it's not very easy to understand for which is relevant for you and which one isn't. And for Switzerland specifically, there's by now quite a few initiatives, support programs, etc. And I guess we are not the only ones that hope for a bit of consolidation in the midterm, at least.
Okay, consolidation for the programs, you mean? Okay, interesting.
And entities and so on, yeah. I don't want to go into detail either, but the Swiss know what I'm talking about, or the ones based in
come on, you can't leave us here on the long arm hungry. So, I mean, I assume that the ESA BICs are not the only breeding ground to grow companies or space companies. So is there, I mean, what I sensed was a competition, but do you interface also with other programs? Are there these very Swiss peaceful cooperation?
You know, like a little picture and anecdote. If the two presidents of the two big technical schools, EPFL, École Polytechnique Ferrale de Lausanne, and ETH Zürich, come together, they always show the picture of a ski competition, because it's competition and friendship at the same time, right? But coming back to your question, there's quite some support for startups in Switzerland, and the whole ecosystem for startups has really taken on a new level, a new dynamic in the last 5 years. I'd like to start with the support actually at the universities, and particularly relevant for us at EPFL in Lausanne and at ETH, because these are high-tech universities, and quite a lot of our startups that we support come out of the school. And already there, they get support in various forms in order to start their venture, to incorporate with the IP, etc. So that's very helpful to start with. I'd also like to mention then the most prominent and most appreciated high-tech startup program in Switzerland is Venture Kick. It's also under the umbrella of Venture Lab. They offer also international excursions to Silicon Valley and China and God knows where. And you know, the best thing about this, we are partnering with them. So we can leverage their pipeline as well, their expertise, etc. And last but not least, also to state, even though in Switzerland a bit less than in other countries, there's also a federal support by InnoSwiss, which is given and offered, for example, in terms of coaching for startups. And yeah, various of our startups are supported by these organizations and others, and it's quite normal because the good ones are supported by various programs.
Okay. It sounds so good, and I'm happy. I see in the participant list that Philip from Venture Kick is in the house, and also want to shoot out to Rainer Horn of Space Tech Partners, who is also very active in the startup scene. I think maybe not so much in Switzerland, but globally or worldwide. So another topic. I know what is very close to your heart, SpinIns. That's a big topic I sensed for you. So why do we believe that SpinIns are important for space, or generally speaking, why startups which only pursue space as one business vertical?
Yeah.
So maybe you can help us on that.
Yeah.
Because we had recently a discussion with my team that we all know so many spin-outs of space industry to humanity or to the rest of the world, but spin-ins, not so many. At least we didn't have them.
Torsten, it's very simple. You just have to come to our ESA BIC demo day in September. You are kindly invited.
You can shamelessly advertise it now here. So,
and you will meet a lot of spin-ins, because in Switzerland and in ESA BIC Switzerland, we have a lot of spin-ins. So maybe we start very basic definition. What are spin-ins? So spin-ins are startups that have a technology that is used on Earth, and that they also see an application for space. So spin in from Earth to space. So these are spin-ins, very simple definition. And why do we have a lot of them in Switzerland? I think it's thanks to our very strong technological basis from EPFL and ETH in Zurich, the two technical schools, and they bring up a lot of really excellent technologies that can be used for applications in businesses on Earth. But then we did in discussions with them, etc., they also find an application for space. And why is this good? You know, I don't have to tell you that at least for the classical traditional space world, things take a long time. And, you know, decision-making is a bit slower. In the commercial space, it's different, I know. And so it's good that they have other verticals where they can already establish a business, but they have various benefits for going into space as well. And quite honestly, we don't only see that for startups, but also for SMEs and corporates in Switzerland. And, you know, one of our prominent partners, very thankful, is Maxon, a corporate in Switzerland, and they deliver their stuff for a lot of markets, but also space. And so they also have a vertical space beside other businesses. And we know about other corporates in Switzerland, which will also enter the space market. I cannot state the names, So they choose that model as well. So why not?
I mean, Maxon Motors, I know, of course, but for the rest, it's interesting to see. I mean, that goes along with space became hip. Space is hip now, and I think make it to the news. And interesting. So when you review your successful alumni and their development, what really makes you, Nanja, proud of one company? You might have not thought about it, you might have not seen this business case, even you potentially thoroughly go through these business plans, but I mean, there's always, I mean, it's a startup, there's a risk involved. So, but where do you say, they nailed it, that was cool, and I was part of that?
Torsten, I mentioned already a few, and there's other ones, and I find it a bit unfair and hard to pick, the very few ones. There's various who really had the perseverance to go through and make it and get there. But we now really see to the fruits of the work from the last 5 years. But I'd actually like to answer your question in a bit of a different way, if you permit. You know, when we put in the bid for the ESA BIC 6 years ago, I had no experience working with startups. I had no clue of space. And, look where we got to. In a few years, we got developed into a quite respected program in Switzerland and European-wide, where really excellent startups apply. And if I just look at the recent cohort that joined in January, I really like in the TEB, in the jury session, I said to Jose, I feel very honored that these startups apply to our program. So we need to be doing something right.
Okay. You don't want to give me your top 5. Okay, I respect that. I respect that. Before I give you a chance for a 90-second pitch, why shall anyone apply for the current cohort? And I think the calls are open till end of this month. Is that correct? 28th?
The next deadline is end of February, yeah.
Now, come on, it's 20 days to go. So if you have your product, if you have your ideas already at hand, apply. I would like to take one question, and Emmanuel, I'm not sure if that was a question, this huge thing you sent us, or just an remark. But however, it's much too long to go through this. But somebody, I don't know, because I don't know who is behind GNGAVAT. I have lost count on the number of times you've mentioned EPFL and ETH, underlining, I think, the importance of research in this field. Fair point. How do you think the current institutional blockade on Swiss participation in European research networks could affect the space sector in Switzerland?
Oh, thanks for that question. Yeah, obviously, it's not great that we are not part of Horizon at the moment. And the presidents of the schools and other universities are reiterating all the time to get back into it. From what I know, and maybe then Michael can jump in from my team, it's that not everything in terms of EU and space is not open for Switzerland right now. There are certain projects, certain calls open. And we actually recently did a session with EU Research and the Space Responsible, discussing exactly what is still open in terms of space. So yeah, we see the EU and space is like a ever more important, thing to watch developing. It's great. And ESA needs to find exactly, the co-petition, right, that I stated before. But we dearly hope that Switzerland is going to get into a Horizon soon again. Because if you look, for example, at our alumni and incubatees, and the proportion that also got supported by the EIC Accelerator program with a couple of millions funding, non-dilutive, it's quite an important vehicle. And the Swiss success rate is relatively high, very high compared to other countries. So we're doing everything to get back in, but it's not so much under my personal control.
Okay, no, but I see your point. But I mean, you have a strong position, obviously, in ESA. Yeah, at least. I'm not sure if you're part of the artist programs as well. Yeah, so it's hard. So maybe there's a way. There's another question, of him, of her. Again, I don't know who's behind it, but I think that's an interesting question. And I know it's not. It will be not your most favorite one that I'm asking, but however, it's a live show here. It's related to the legal framework. Obviously, Switzerland is extremely business friendly, but should we develop a specific legal framework for space on the model of the Luxembourg, for instance? Question mark.
That's a bit of a challenging one for me. Because I'm not the space expert per se in the team. Michael, you can also help to answer on that one. I think it's quite admirable what Luxembourg is doing, attracting players, startups, etc. You know, I think in Switzerland, we need to play on other, strengths the country offers. I think in Luxembourg, they don't have an EPFL and ETH, for example.
And they have Uni-LU. So
we still have various and quite a lot of students.
Come on, that's not fair. You're much bigger than Luxembourg.
Yeah. In terms of the only thing I can say in Switzerland, industrial policy is a bit of a difficult thing because there is not so much. They don't want to intervene too much into what industry is doing. I know that there's also discussions of new space framework, law, etc. That Switzerland is thinking of. So will be interesting to follow and observe what is happening there.
Yeah, I would have interpreted the question also in direction of a space law, but I mean, things are in process, politically in process, whatever that means, but we all know that it will take time. KP raised a question which I really like. I would have an interest in medical care topics around the Artemis scenario. Is there a startup dealing with that topic?
Very good one. We would love to have medical care, pharma, medical startups related to space applying to our program in Switzerland. We had one so far that awesome. did not make it because they were purely focusing on a scientific mission in space, which is not sufficient to qualify for ESA BIC because we are a business incubator. So you should have a business niche connection at least, and not purely for a scientific mission. So on that one, we cannot offer too much because we don't have these startups in our program yet. But we really dearly hope in the next 5 years that we will have some of these.
Interesting that you're putting Artemis in the scientific direction. I thought it's rather open.
No,
also
I wasn't talking about Artemis, okay. But I was talking about that startup which applied to our program, and the space connection that they brought to the table was a pure one to a scientific mission. I was not relating to Artemis itself.
I see. And we just got on the text here. The question before was from Jean-Nicolas Javet. Thank you very much for making that transparent. So before we go to close the session, give us your 90-second pitch. Why shall I apply for the current cohort?
It's a great community. You're going to learn from your peers as well. You can get up to 200,000 euro non-dilutive funding, great business and technical support. And if you have a question related to your space connection, don't hesitate to contact us. We are happy to discuss it. And we are very much looking forward to your application. Deadline, end of February for the next one, and the one after, end of October.
Great. Thank you very much. And if you haven't been are convinced by now, then no one can help you. So thank you very much, Nanja. I'm afraid we have to come to an end, but I'm quite sure we will talk again on those various formats that we have, because it's super inspiring to listen to you and to see how the Swiss space network, space ecosystem is developing. So, but before we are finishing, I would like to announce our next events to our audience here in the house. And on Thursday, we have a full day. So we start with at 1:30 p.m. Central European time with another Space Arbitration Association event by Laura Zielinski. So is there a need for an institution specialized in space disputes? Very interesting topic. And then in the afternoon, we have our next edition of the Space Café Moribus Vox Populi. And this time it's to the Hollywood movie, Look Up, what will it take for humanity to take actions on space environmentalism? A difficult word, but even more important that we take action. So on the next week, also very important for everyone in ESA, is during the Space Summit in Toulouse. We will have on Tuesday, on Monday, a Space Café Brazil by Ian Grosner with Rafael Röttgen in Portuguese this time, even Rafael in Portuguese. That will be interesting to see. Then on the 15th of February, on Tuesday, I have my 33 minutes with Ran Livne from the Ramon Foundation in Israel about the upcoming Rika mission in Israel and the Israeli space startup system. And on the 17th, I'm happy to announce that our next Space Café Germany by Andreas Schepers will kick off in German, in Deutsch of course, with Volker Schmidt, and he is the head of the Cosmic Kiss mission of Matthias Maurer on the ISS right now. And on Friday, we will finish next week with our next Space Café Scotland by the wonderful Angela Mattis. So all events are going to be online on Eventbrite, and as always, we would like to hear your feedback. So please check in with us on Twitter, on Facebook, and LinkedIn. And if you have an idea for another guest, another theme, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And don't forget to sign up to our daily or bi-weekly newsletters. And if you like to treat yourself with something special, become a Space Watcher today. It can't be easier than that, or help us in the supporter program. And thank you, Nanja, for this really inspiring talk and being our guest. And thanks again to the entire team behind the scenes for doing their great job week by week again, I have to say. I hope you all will stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks for joining us, and I hope to see you on Thursday or next week. In the meantime, visit our website, follow us on social media, and don't forget, become a Space Watcher. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Torsten. It was a
great
pleasure.
Great pleasure.